Good evening, everybody. Goeiedag, good evening. Dumelang, Tobela, Salam alaikum, Shalom, Absheni, and good evening to everybody watching on the African continent. Everybody who's outside of the continent. I don't know if it's good morning, good afternoon where you are, but hello. Welcome to the Africa for Palestine webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us again, and thank you for supporting our webinar series thus far. Today we continue our webinar series, and we are joined by a very special guest, Ms. Jane Mufamadi. Ms. Jane Mufamadi runs a very prestigious museum and cultural precinct in South Africa, I dare say in Southern Africa. And she joins this webinar series today to have an exciting discussion about how we preserve the memory of our struggles, post our struggles, of course. Again, good evening, Ms. Mufamadi. How are you feeling?
Good evening. I'm fine, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited.
No, thank you for honoring our invitation and joining this webinar series. Just to make an introduction, those who are not familiar with our work, we are Africa for Palestine. We are a South African-based Palestine human rights organization that does work in the African continent. Primarily, our work is to spread Palestine awareness in the African continent and to push back Israeli influence in the continent. We work with many organizations that identify with our cause. We work with different political parties. We work with trade union movements. We work with religious structures, your mosques, your churches, your synagogues. We work with different civil society organizations and profit organizations and government organizations in the broader civil society movement in the African continent. We started this webinar series last year when the lockdown started to happen due to the pandemic. We've had a series of a long range of a series of guests on this platform that speak about different things in their different fields, different things affecting different people in different parts of the world, and particularly on international solidarity. We've covered Swaziland, we've covered Cuba, we've covered Venezuela, we've covered Western Sahara, we've covered many other countries where there's oppression as well. For what we know to be true is that oppressed people have almost at all times a common oppressor, just like we did in apartheid South Africa. So we have this discussion, this webinar series, but we also dive into many other issues of culture, arts, academia, and so on. And today we are joined by somebody who will speak extensively not only to preserving memory, but running something very practical. I think we've not had in this webinar series a perspective from people who are running physical, practical, cultural and museum size on preserving history. We had academics on this webinar series. We had activists before, authors and so on, but we've never really had a discussion around, the physicality of it. And I think this is very special episode for us. To introduce Ms. Mufamadi, she is the Chief Executive Officer of Freedom Park, one of South Africa's most prestigious museums. That also includes a well-celebrated memorial dedicated to those who fought in South Africa's liberation struggle. The memorial also pays homage to leaders Steve Biko, Oliver Tambo, Helen Joseph, Bram Fischer, and international and continental leaders for their contributions to the liberation of South Africa and other repressed people in general. People like the Mozambican President Samora Machel, Bissau-Guinean leader Amílcar Cabral, Argentina's Che Guevara, Cuban President Fidel Castro, and freedom fighters of Haiti. Ms. Mufamadi, again, welcome to this webinar series. Just to begin, just tell us walk us through the concept, the building principles on Freedom Park. And I think putting aside your traditional museums, this is something very different on its own. Just walk us through the concepts and the building principles of Freedom Park.
Thank you for asking that question. Firstly, in terms of our mandate, I would say that the first principle would be the constitution of our country, because if you look at the preamble in particular, it states that we, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land. But it will also go on to talk about issues around healing the divisions of the past and establishing a society that is based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. So we are all about all those aspects. We see ourselves as fulfilling the mandate as derived from the constitution of our country. But you will also recall that in South Africa, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And through one of its committees, which was called the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee, they really emphasized issues of restoration of dignity, the rights of the individuals or communities to acknowledgement of the fact that violations were committed against them in terms of their rights, and also ensuring that everybody has a right of a sense of worth. I think that is very important. And therefore, when Freedom Park was conceptualized, it was really to honor those who died for freedom and humanity. I think President Mandela in 1999, during the celebration of Freedom Day, clearly articulated our mandate. And this is where the processes then to establish Freedom Park began in earnest. And he said that the day should not be far off when we shall have a people's shrine, a freedom park where we shall honor with all the dignity they deserve those who endured pain, so we should experience the joy of freedom. It is very important that we understand that the journey that we have traversed as a country, as a nation, and as people of the world, we need to preserve that memory. We need to remind ourselves at all times. And therefore, when we conceptualized Freedom Park, particularly guided by that statement, we took a holistic approach and we privileged what we call the 4 pillars at Freedom Park, which is our history, our cultures, our spirituality and heritage. And we anchored everything within our own indigenous knowledge systems, because remember, freedom is about self-determination. It's about the emancipation of our own voices. And the narrative or the story that we tell here at Freedom Park, it's about telling the world in our own words and voices about who we are, where we come from, but most importantly, where we want to go as a nation. The issues of social cohesion, peace, and stability are very important to Freedom Park. So in a nutshell, that is really the principles that guides and anchors the programs that we embark on at Freedom Park.
And thanks for those really powerful words from President Nelson Mandela. When most people, I think, that are born after 1994, when they conceptualize what freedom is, those are some of the words that really should resonate with the youth of South Africa. And maybe to those who have never been to Freedom Park, who hear about this concept, who hear about these 4 pillars, just walk us through what is it? We know it's a physical site, physically is there, and I know it's acres and acres of land. It's huge. So just tell us what is it? What is the building? What are some of the attractions at Freedom Park?
You are right. We are a 52-hectare site, and we comprise 2 main elements: what we call the Garden of Remembrance and what we call the Interpretive Center, or the museum, if you like. One of the exciting aspects about Freedom Park is that the physical structure itself tells a story. There is symbolism around the design and the architecture of its building. Obviously, we have relied heavily on our African knowledge systems and also knowledge of architecture, and we're very proud of that. So within the Garden of Remembrance, this is where you find the gallery of leaders. You have alluded to some of the names that we have honored there, and there is more. Currently, we have 44 names within our gallery of leaders, and as you said, from the national, continental, and international aspects. And then we have our main memorial, which is the Wall of Names. To date, we have inscribed about 145,000 names across the 8 conflicts that shaped what we call South Africa today. So we go back in time. We start with the pre-colonial wars, the wars of resistance, the genocide of the Khoi and the San, slavery. And you will recall that South Africa had a special form of slavery where slaves were actually brought in from other countries, and there were also slaves that were derived from our own communities. So we talk about that within our wall of names. We also look at the World War I and II and what we call the South African War, or formerly known as the Anglo-Boer War. What people don't realize, maybe because we get a lot of questions around why the Anglo-Boer War, there were Africans who participated in both sides, who were formally not recognized and not acknowledged for their contributions. And at Freedom Park, we have then included everybody, but we also, then the last aspect will be the 4 pillars of the liberation struggle. And we have other, if you like, entertainment areas, like the 8-span plaque, which is our picnic area. So you can just come for a picnic with your basket, or we have a restaurant, you can come and buy food and sit in some of the spaces. We have the sanctuary where people can come reflect or pray in the manner that they feel comfortable with in terms of their religions and belief systems. So, and then within the interpretive center, which we call Kapo, or dream. Kapo is a Khoi Nama word, which means dream. And we derived this from a Khoi proverb that says, a dream is not a dream until it is shared by the entire community. And this is a rallying call that we make as Freedom Park for people to come together for unity, for peace, social cohesion, and reconciliation. And we're also proud. I spoke about the design and the architecture, that Kapo was rated in 2015 amongst the top 10 architecturally outstanding museums in the world. What gives us pride is the affirmation of African design and architecture, because this is uniquely African. And we did not necessarily want to borrow from other cultures out of Africa, but it's uniquely African, and we're very proud of that. So within our interpretive center, we have what we call 7 epochs. We did not follow your conventional linear approach to narrations in terms of museums and exhibits. So we privileged what we call epochs. These are eras in our lives that made qualitative leaps that brought about a particular change or impacted or disrupted our way of living. And the first space epoch will be Earth, where we talk about creation. And again, we privilege African stories of creation. And then you will move to the ancestors, to peopling, to resistance and colonialization, to industrialization and urbanization, and finally, nationalisms and struggle. And then once you deal with nationalisms and struggles, you will come to nation building and continent building, because we are always about Africa. It's not just about South Africa, but we see ourselves embedded and integrated in our African being and with our African brothers and sisters. And in a nutshell, that is Freedom Park at a glance. These are different spaces. There are also other smaller spaces. For example, our spiritual space called Isivivane, which again was conceptualized in such a manner that irrespective of the belief systems or the religion that you believe in, you find yourself accommodated one way or the other within this space. Because again, as I said, we're about inclusivity, we are about integration and unity, and the celebration of unity in diversity, but also we express through the elements and our programs the triumph of the human spirit.
One of the highlights for me, Ms. Mufamadi, is when we were there for a cultural night, I think 2 or 3 years back, and we were walking in the park at night, and you could see Victoria from all sides, and it was just so gorgeous. It was just so beautiful, and I think that's the entertainment side of it, and I think it's very good. So if you like good scenery, that's definitely something to see at Freedom Park as well. So, like I said, I was there. I've been to Freedom Park a couple of times, but as attending some of the social justice kind of civil society events at Freedom Park, organized by Freedom Park and sometimes co-organized by Freedom Park. And there's that type of divide that Freedom Park is a government project, it's a government type of institution. But you do a lot of work with civil society organizations. Can you just walk us through that divide? Is there a divide between that, or is this part of the responsibility of Freedom Park?
I would say it is part of the responsibility of Freedom Park. It is true that we derive our mandate from government, but our understanding is that government's priority is to impact on the lives of ordinary peoples and communities at large. And as you say, we actually see our work and the work of civil society organizations in particular as integrated, because most of these organizations and entities are concerned about the same issues that we are concerned about. So we see a commonality of visions or the coming together of the minds, but through the networks that they have, civil society have within our communities, we are able to reach areas that otherwise we will not be able to reach through the working together, through the partnerships. And I mean, for example, you see civil society is concerned with issues like human rights violations in various forms, but also in terms of redress. In South Africa, we talk a lot about redress and in terms of the imbalances of the past. And many of these entities are working towards empowering and capacitating those that are previously marginalized. And that is why we support or partner with them, especially the like-minded entities. But our vision as Freedom Park, we are striving to be a leading national and international icon of humanity and freedom. So as an implementing arm of government, we see our mandate as broader, but we also see ourselves as a bridge between communities and government. We are able at a certain level to influence or to alert government on the challenges within communities. And we get that through our work with civil society, which maybe the government may listen better or quicker in terms of the proximity that we have. But we also see ourselves as understanding communities better through the networks that we have with civil society. But also, as I spoke about the TRC, during the finalization of the report, or if you look at some of the recommendations of the TRC, particularly when they speak about symbolic reparations, they made a call that entities such as museums and monuments, which they also see, by the way, as part of symbolic reparation, because there is a recognition that money cannot undo the pain and the experiences that people have gone through. So the call was that monuments and memorials and museums should be linked to processes that seeks to improve the daily socio-economic conditions of the victims and also of the communities at large. And they also felt that this is how would I say it, a necessary aspect in terms of the corrective and rehabilitative nature in terms of the social programs that are developed, so that the social, the psychological, needs of communities and of South Africans at large can be addressed. And we believe what a better way to do that than working with civil society. So civil societies, NGOs, and other organizations at large assist us to impact better the communities and to address some of the challenges that the communities are going through, which we otherwise on our own are not able to decipher, understand, and or to reach.
And I think one of the things that we appreciate as civil society and as NGOs in South Africa is Freedom Park's unapologetic approach to working with like-minded organizations. I know in the recent past you got some flack from some right-wing organizations about the work with other organizations. We appreciate that you are unapologetically in alliance with like-minded organizations. And when you go to Freedom Park, you get a strong sense of international solidarity. And as a young South African as well, and as a young person who identifies with many other young people, there's a sense of international solidarity slowly feathering away xenophobic attacks in South Africa in the recent past, apartheid as to what's happening, for instance, in Mozambique. So there's that eroding consciousness of international solidarity. But at Freedom Park, it's almost everywhere. It's almost around. You just walk us through why is there an appreciation, why is there a strong sense of internationalism and international solidarity at Freedom Park?
That's quite an interesting one, and yes, we have received flack, a lot of it at certain instance, but we are really unwavering in affirming ourselves and our voices, making our voices heard, or the plight of our people and communities. This we really take, I would say, first and foremost, it emanates from our African culture and belief systems. The saying that mutundi mutu ngawatu, the humane nature of our cultures, where we are encouraged through our cultural belief systems and practices to see ourselves reflected in the other person. It's a common practice that when my brother is not happy, I'm not happy. And we see ourselves united at all times, because alone, we have a saying that says one finger cannot pick a grain. You need two fingers or three so that you pick a grain. And that is how we derive this strong sense of international community and solidarity. But as I said before, that we strive to be an international icon of humanity and freedom. But most importantly, you will recall that the fourth pillar of the liberation struggle is international solidarity. So we have gone through mass struggle, underground armed struggle, and so forth. However, the international solidarity, we realize and acknowledge that had it not been because of the support that we received from the international communities, we probably would not be free today. So we pay homage to our local heroes and heroines, but we give similar acknowledgement to those who assisted us during our hour of need. We have developed a lot of friendship and forged strong ties that unapologetically we're not going to break, because we know that they were there when it was not fashionable to do so. But also we understand that international solidarity, if you look at it from a broader perspective, it includes issues around sustainability in international relations, but also issues around peaceful coexistence of all members of the community and the international communities. It talks about equalities, equal partnerships, and also the equitable sharing of benefits and burdens. Because when we celebrate, we're happy, we come together, but also when there are problems, we also need to come together and help each other. But it is also encourages us to refrain from doing harm or posing obstacles to the greater well-being of others. And therefore, and by the way, speaking of civil society earlier, we know that civil society across the world also participated in campaigns against apartheid. And they were our friends, even when in some instances their country's policies did not support us, but civil society was there, and therefore that is why it's very important for us.
And just zooming in here, I've attended a number of events, like I said before, in Freedom Park, and you've had a number of events that speak on the Palestinian question. I remember there was Israeli apartheid week launch with some members of civil society, trade unions. I remember it was COSATU and the ANC and the SSCP, I think, if my memory serves me well. And you've had a number of events, exhibitions. Why is it important for Freedom Park to participate or to speak on the Palestinian question?
I will start. Madiba was our patron-in-chief at Freedom Park, so we have learned a lot from him. And there is one of his famous quotes that says, "To be free is not merely to cast off one's chain, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." So we see ourselves doing that. But again, I did indicate that we are an entity of government and we derive our mandate from there. The Palestinian position, it's not only our South African government position, but it's also an African Union position. If you look at many AU meetings, and in particular, maybe if I may just flag the 33rd Assembly of Heads of States and Governments in Addis Ababa, the AU chairperson reiterated that African solidarity with the people of Palestine will never change. And our own president, actually in several of his speeches, if you follow him, he always talks about that. He has also in the same session expressed what he described as Africa's unwavering solidarity with the people of Palestine. And in one of the sessions again, he said that those who live in conditions of liberty and democracy have the responsibility to those who struggle against occupation. But it is common knowledge also that South Africa's history of colonial and apartheid, how can I say it? And the international struggles that we have gone through are similarly, we can draw similar parallels with the people of Palestine and their liberation struggle. So the current plight of the people of Palestine, it's really our own struggle. They were there also for us during our time of need. We believe that we are duty bound to return the favor, if I may use that word. When, as I said, no one else was there, we had few friends, and there were some of the friends, despite their own challenges, who were there for us. I think Madiba and OR has really spoken about this role, and therefore we are an entity of government. We derive our mandate there. We are duty bound, but also given our past experience of pain and oppression, we believe we understand what they're going through. And we believe if we can make an impact, contribute to them one day, celebrating peace, stability, and sovereignty, we can do that.
And thank you for that. And also Madiba said that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. And many quotes that he said. One of the things he said is that Yasser Arafat at the time, the president of the Palestine Liberation Organization, that he's a comrade in arms, he's a brother in arms. I think most people in the African continent don't know that during the time of armed struggle in South Africa, combatants of the liberation struggle were trained alongside Palestine liberation fighters in Algeria and other parts of Africa. So our struggle is really indeed their struggle, and their struggle is our struggle.
Yes.
And coming to this really challenging question, I like to think that we are quickly living in the age of technology. Almost everything is digitalized. And unfortunately, and I'm saying this unfortunately because I don't think it's a good thing, because of COVID and the pandemic, we've been pushed to the edge to innovate, to find new ways of doing things. For instance, we have this webinar. So ordinarily, CEO would be at Freedom Park having one of these sessions, but because of COVID, we are forced and we're pushed to have it online and to adapt to a new age of doing things. How has this impacted Freedom Park? Are there challenges that perhaps are there positives on the side of Freedom Park of the digitalization and technology of our times?
I would say both. Well, traditionally, museums are more of a people-to-people contact. We love people. We love to interact on a face-to-face. So when, for example, now it feels so empty. We're experiencing low turnout in terms of the visitors number. So we feel like something is missing. We're missing our people, the warmth that we get when people are there. But we also believe that the digital age also offers opportunities, particularly for preservation of our memories, as we said. And we have since inception kind of predicted that there will come a day that digital media will be the thing, even COVID or no COVID. So, for example, if you come to our museum, Capo, you will find that in terms of our narratives and exhibitions, 95% is technology and only 5% is physical exhibits or objects. And we also have the Pan-African archives that are largely and mainly digital and dialogical. So we were trying, but in a very laid back, I would say, or relaxed mode. And now with COVID, we had to rely on digital platforms, and really, we really had to work harder to change things in terms of how we do things. We found ourselves last year, we were celebrating 20 years anniversary. We had to do it digitally. That commemoration and many others. These are activities that we would have done physical. And now we are also focusing on strengthening our virtual tours. We have recently developed the Freedom Park app, the virtual tour also on through our websites. I do believe that the fourth industrial revolution has its own advantages in terms of preserving the memories, but it also, because one is that it will provide opportunities for a wider reach. People who will not be able to come physically can interact with what we do, our work, and know who we are as a country, our history, and so forth. But obviously, we're moving slowly at a slow pace as museums, and we see through the impact of COVID, the serious impact that we have had because of not necessarily moving with the times in full.
I agree 100%. That we must have human-to-human contact. It feels lonely, CEO, during these times.
It does. It does.
I'm going to give you a very difficult challenge to wrap up this very good discussion we had. I'm going to unfortunately ask you to choose between your children. But if I'm watching this interaction and I'm interested in going to Freedom Park, what are your top 3 attractions? If I go to Freedom Park, this is what I must see before I leave. What would be your top 3 locations or attractions to see at Freedom Park?
I think you're making things difficult for me. Let me try. I hope I won't pay for this. Our museum, I think we have the best museums. We have the best exhibits. In particular, as I said, the first epoch Earth, where we talk about the story of creation from an African perspective. I believe everybody must come and see that. But obviously our main memorial, which is the Wall of Names, because this is what we are all about. This is the purpose of our existence, honoring those who suffered so that we can be free. The good thing about Freedom Park is that while we want people to remember that our freedom was not free, that blood was shed. We don't want people to harbor the spirit of revenge and anger. We want people to celebrate the triumph of the human spirit, the perseverance spirit that our people had. So the wall of names, it's really a testimony to that. That is what we celebrate. But I cannot forget Isivivane, the first element to be conceptualized and constructed at Freedom Park, where we celebrate the diversity in terms of spirituality. We know the influence that religion has on our people, but we are saying it is possible to believe in what you believe, but still coexist and respect. The tenets of religion and spirituality are the same. You may practice different. We are all taught to be humane, to love each other, to love thy neighbor, to respect and to be compassionate. So there are commonalities if we choose to look at that. So for me, that will be my top three. But the other aspects that I didn't mention are equally exciting. Please do come. As you said, you can have 360 views of the whole city of Pretoria. You can watch Pretoria from any angle when you are at Freedom Park.
And my favorite also, and I think that is very close to my heart, is the wall of names. There's a section of soldiers who died in the Battle of Guadalcanal, and this is not people who are politicians. These are not celebrities. They're not well known. These are ordinary Cubans, family men, sons, and fathers who gave their lives in the Battle in Angola, Guadalcanal, and this Freedom Park. They have their names engraved, and you can see all of their names, all of them. And I think that's one of my favorite sites in Freedom Park. It's really touching. It goes to the heart.
Yeah, and then our
thank
minister.
You very much for doing this work.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're saying our minister?
No, I was just saying our minister this year declared the 23rd of March the day of reflection in remembrance of those who died in Guadalcanal, but the role that war and the victory impacted on us attaining our freedom. So every year, the 23rd of March, we'll be commemorating Guadalcanal. So you are invited to come for that.
No, I'm coming. On the 23rd of you coming. It's a very important day in our history. I thank you very much for carrying out this work, and I think when you're young, probably in your teen years, 18, 19, you don't really see the importance of preserving history. But then when you're like in your late 20s, and then you start to realize that these are important lessons in life, these are important lessons to teach the other generations to come. So thank you very much for your work, and thank you to the South African government for taking such a project. You can check everything about Freedom Park on their website, www.freedompark.co.za. They are on the social media pages. They are on Facebook, Freedom Park SA, on Instagram, Freedom Park SA, and on Twitter, Freedom Park _. That's where you'll find them. They're interactive, they'll respond, and almost everything on their website you will find. Thank you so much for joining our webinar series and honoring our invitation. We look forward to getting back to full physical contact so that we can host more events in Freedom Park. We can see each other again.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, and have a good night, Ms. Mufamadi. See you soon.
Thank you.